When Ron asked me if I would come and play the role of interviewer for his talk, I was like, well, happily. And we're just gonna hang out for the next few minutes while I sort of help Ron to find the messages that he wants to leave you with tonight. So I'll let you start and we'll go back and forth.
Okay. Hi. So I founded a theater company when I was an undergraduate student at Washington University, primarily because I had friends who were theater majors. I was not a theater major, but my friends were not being cast in the plays. Your friends were not being cast in plays, and they were always complaining and ruining the parties, complaining, bringing everybody down. And because, at the time I was fairly militant and had been exposed to revolutionary techniques, I suggested that if the theater department was not going to cast them in plays, that we start our own plays. We start doing our own plays. And because we paid tuition, that meant that we should be able to have access to the facilities. And so we started a student group, and we began to have rap sessions to talk about building this theater company. And at the time, as I said, I was not a theater major. I didn't really know anything about how to start a theater company. I knew how to build something for people who were being denied an opportunity. I knew how to fill a void, and there was a void. And in many instances in this community, that void still persists, I would say. And so the work that the Black Rep has been doing for the last 46 years is the same work that that group of students started to do on that college campus. And I think that it is very important that this community over the last 46 years has supported a vision that was really put in place, as I said, to fill a void, to provide opportunities for people who had aspirations to pursue a career in the arts, to pursue a career in the theater, to be able to tell Black stories, to be able to tell American stories from a Black perspective, to be able to fill in the blanks in history, to be able to showcase and celebrate a rich African American heritage.
Can I say something?
Mm-hmm.
Black Rep is one of a handful of professional Black theaters that have survived over these many decades, a handful throughout the nation. One of the largest, in fact, is the Black Rep in St. Louis. And it has been charged with preserving the rich canon of Black theater and contributing to it. Because there are generations of people who never, ever experienced the things that the Black Rep needs to make sure people experience. So the last video, just before we came out, was about dreaming. And it was about the importance of dreaming. And you talked about being able to fill a void because you were a business school major. So you know operations stuff, you know how to do business. But that wasn't about the business and the mechanics of it. That was about being able to dream and to imagine and to vision something. So talk a little bit about how you have dreamed this place into existence.
I think that part of it is rooted right in the name. The company is called the St. Louis Black Repertory Company. It is not the Black Repertory Theater, which people have a tendency to call it. But my dream, my vision was to start a company, to be able to build something that could employ Black people, to be able to build an institution, a company, as it were, that could employ people. And I didn't see anything like it. I had the opportunity to spend a summer doing an internship with Joe Papp at the New York Shakespeare Festival, the public theater in New York. And I mean, they own like a whole city block in New York. It took that much space to house all of their offices and their shops and their rehearsal spaces and their theaters. And I looked at it and I said, you mean there can't be anything like this in America that a Black company has? I think that we can do that. I think that we could build something like that. I believe, I imagine, and I believe that we can do that. And so it's interesting, you know, it's been incremental. You know, it was a lot of ways the little engine that could, and you know, and I think that a lot of people really can't believe that the Black Rep is still in existence, right? I came out of what would have been the Black arts movement of the 60s, right? And there were a lot of Black arts organizations that were formed in the 60s that formed who I am and informed who I am. And then, as you said, there were a spate of theater companies that were founded in the 70s when the Black Rep was founded. But I think that a lot of those companies, you know, did not spend the time or make the investment to lay a foundation. And over the years, people have asked me, well, why didn't you leave and go to New York? Or why didn't you leave and go to Los Angeles? Or you know, why didn't you go to Hollywood? And my answer usually is because my dream was to build something in St. Louis for people in St. Louis. When we have a hit show, people are like, when is it going on the road? I'm like, it's not. It runs here for 3 weeks, it runs here for 4 weeks, and then it's over. It's St. Louis actors, it's St. Louis designers, it's St. Louis craftspeople, it's people who we have trained. We have teenagers, right, who we train, much like the Michael who spoke earlier, right? So we train teenagers to work backstage, right? When I was growing up, I never saw a live theater production until I was a freshman in high school. And that's because I was in the honors group. And the honors group got to go places. We went to the art museum, we went to the theater, we went places. But I had buddies who I hung out with, who I grew up with, who never saw a live play until I found the Black Rep. And so one of my dreams, one of my visions, something that I imagined is that we could do something about that. And so one of my things that we've done forever is to make sure that we introduce theater to young people, that we take theater into the schools, that we expose young people at as early an age as possible so that they grow up with an appreciation and an understanding that this is not a luxury. Going to the theater should not be a luxury. Going to the theater should not be for rich folks. Going to the theater should not be just for white folks. Going to the theater is part of our history, right? 1821. 1821, there is a professional theater company in New York City that performed only Shakespeare and performed for 2 years until the police closed the theater down and passed a law that Black people could not speak Shakespeare on a New York stage because the white theater that was next door didn't want the competition. And so we have been being the competition since 1821. We have been continuing to build upon the work that the African Grove Theater did in 1821 with James Hewlett, the company that inspired the great Ira Aldridge, right? And so if they're not companies like this, if they're not the ability for young people to see themselves on the stage, to see somebody on stage that they recognize as, oh, that's my uncle, that's my father, that's my brother. I know that person. I know that story. And that story is an American story. We're telling the stories that other theaters, for whatever reason, refuse to tell, have not told.
That right there. I was thinking about this earlier. I was thinking about some of the work that you have done, some of the pieces in the production you've done that need to be told. And I was thinking particularly in light of the really harsh legislative season that we've just finished up, and some of the assaults and attacks on different groups of people, particularly our trans citizens. And I remembered that there was a similar effort in the 80s around HIV and AIDS. And you did one of the most powerful productions before it hits home, where Black people were not thinking about or talking about the impact of AIDS in our community. And this singular piece that you did got so many people's lives saved. And I just want you to think about like the charge of social responsibility and affirming people's dignity by the work that you do.
Well, you know, the thing that I believe is that theater has the ability to heal. Theater has the ability to build bridges. And in the stories that we tell, the Black Rep has done about 20 world premieres. That's new work that we continue to do to add to an existing canon of Black literature for the American stage. Most people now know August Wilson and know the work of August Wilson. But what they don't know is that there were writers way before August Wilson.
I think most people still don't know August Wilson.
Really?
Yeah.
August Wilson is a playwright who wrote 10 plays that are now known as the American Century Cycle. He wrote one play for each decade of the 19th century. The Black Rep was the third company in the United States to do all 10 of those plays. We're in the process of going through that cycle a second time, and we only have 2 more shows to do, and we will have completed the cycle 2 times, and I don't think that any other company in the country has done that. But I do this kind of work because it has the ability to affect change. It has the ability to stimulate conversation. You know, I'm going to say this because I want to make sure I get to say this before we run out. So this is what I think about the theater. You look out there now and it's dark, right? And if any of you had come into the theater now while it was dark and your seat was in the middle of the aisle that you sit in, you would have said, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, and got to your seat in the middle of the row. But because it is dark, you don't know who you're sitting next to. The person you're sitting next to could be Black or white. They could be rich or poor. It could be a male. It could be a female. It could be neither. It could be non-binary. It could be a rich person. But what you will notice in the next 2 hours as you watch the play that you come to see is that when you laughed, the person next to you laughed. When you sniffled, the person next to you sniffled. When you got ready to cry, maybe they handed you a tissue. What we find in the theater at the Black Rep is that we are able to share an experience in the dark. And our mission is to make sure that when the lights come up, we can look at the person next to us and understand why it is important for us to be able to share those same emotions in the light. And that is the power of the theater, to be able to move us as a community, to be able to see common causes that we have to work together to do to make this community the best community it could be, and to make it a community where we want to raise our families, where we want to have children, where we want to make sure that our children are educated, and where there are as many important African American cultural institutions as there are other major cultural institutions in this community. And that's our time.
And that's our time.